My name is Dorothy Williams, and I'm sitting in room 237 of the Sunny Meadows nursing home. It's been 4 months, 12 days, and 7 hours since my family dropped me off here. They promised they'd visit every single day. Not one person has come. But what happened because of their abandonment? What I discovered in this nursing home? That's a story you won't believe. Let me tell you about the day I realized my family had completely forgotten about me. The day everything changed. It was a Thursday afternoon. I know because Thursday is meatloaf day in the dining hall, and I can smell it from my room. I was sitting in my wheelchair by the window, looking out at the parking lot like I did every day, watching for my daughter Rebecca's car. She'd promised. The day they moved me in, she'd held my hand and said, "Mom, we'll be here every day, every single day. You won't be alone." That was 4 months ago. I watched car after car pull into the parking lot, families getting out, children bringing balloons and flowers, grandchildren running excitedly to visit their grandparents. But no one came for me. My roommate, Mrs. Patterson, had 3 visitors that afternoon. Her daughter, her son, and her grandson. They brought her cookies and sat with her for 2 hours, laughing and talking. I sat by my window and watched the parking lot. At 5 p.m., a nurse named Sandra came to take me to dinner. "Any visitors today, Mrs. Williams?" Sandra asked cheerfully. "Not today," I said, like I said every day. Sandra's smile faltered. "Well, I'm sure they'll come tomorrow." But they wouldn't come tomorrow. They hadn't come yesterday, or the day before, or the day before that. They weren't coming at all. As Sandra wheeled me down the hallway toward the dining room, we passed the family visiting area. It was full of people, happy conversations, laughter, love. I felt so alone. We reached the dining room, and Sandra positioned my wheelchair at my usual table. I eat alone. Most of the other residents have table mates, friends they've made, or roommates they eat with. But I haven't made friends here. I haven't wanted to. Because I kept thinking my family would come, that I wouldn't be here long enough to need friends. I was eating my meatloaf when I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me, is the seat taken?" I turned to see a woman about my age, maybe 80 or so, with bright white hair and kind eyes. She was holding her dinner tray and smiling at me. "The table's empty," I said flatly. "I'm Vera Martinez," the woman said, sitting down across from me. "I'm in room 241. I've seen you around, but we've never talked." "Dorothy Williams," I said, not really wanting to talk. "How long have you been here?" Vera asked. 4 months, I said. "I've been here 2 years, Vera said. "It gets easier." "I'm not planning to be here that long," I said. "My family is going to take me home soon." Vera looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sympathy, sadness. "That's nice," she said gently. "Do they visit often?" "They're very busy," I said defensively. "They have work and children and things, but they'll visit, they promised." Vera just nodded and started eating her dinner. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Vera said, "You sit by your window a lot, watching the parking lot." "How do you know that?" I asked. "My room is across the hall from yours," Vera said. "I see you when I walk by. You're always at that window." I didn't know what to say to that. "Dorothy," Vera said carefully, "how many times has your family visited in these 4 months?" I didn't want to answer, but something about Vera's kind eyes made me tell the truth. "0 times," I whispered. Vera reached across the table and put her hand on mine. "I'm sorry." "They're just busy," I said again, pulling my hand back. "They'll come, you'll see. They promised they'd visit every day." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it anymore. Before we continue this story and find out what Dorothy discovered in that nursing home and what happened because her family abandoned her, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that like button and turn on an OTFICTONS because this story is going to take you on an emotional journey you won't forget. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Jamaica, Philippines. Let me know who's with me. Now let's get back to Dorothy's story. To understand how I ended up in Sunny Meadows nursing home, I need to take you back to 4 months earlier. Back to when I was still living in my own house. Back to when my family made the decision that changed everything. I'm 83 years old. Up until 4 months ago, I lived alone in the house I'd shared with my late husband Thomas for 55 years. Thomas died 3 years ago. After he passed, I continued living in our house by myself. I managed fine. I could cook my own meals. I could bathe myself. I could take care of the house. Sure, I moved a little slower than I used to. Sure, I sometimes forgot where I put my glasses or what day of the week it was, but I was independent. Then I had a fall. It was early one morning. I was walking from my bedroom to the bathroom and I tripped over the edge of the rug. I fell hard, broke my hip. I lay on the floor for 6 hours before my daughter, Rebecca, came by to check on me and found me. The hospital, surgery, rehabilitation, it all happened so fast. And during my recovery, my family made the decision. "Mom, you can't live alone anymore," Rebecca said, sitting beside my hospital bed. "It's not safe." "I'm fine," I protested. "It was just a fall. It could happen to anyone." "Mom, you're 83 years old," my son Michael added. He was standing at the foot of my bed with his arms crossed. "You live alone in a big house. What if you fall again? What if something else happens?" "I'll be more careful," I said. "That's not good enough," Rebecca said. "We've talked about it, and we think it's time for you to move into a nursing home." "A nursing home," I said, feeling panic rising in my chest. "No, absolutely not. I'm not going to one of those places." "Mom, it's for your own good," Michael said. "We've already found a place," Rebecca said. "Sunny Meadows, it's very nice. They have activities and nurses and—" "No," I said firmly. "I'm not going. I'm going home, to my house." "Mom, we've already made the decision," Michael said. "You're going to Sunny Meadows. We've already paid the first month." "You can't make me go," I said, my voice rising. "Actually, we can," Rebecca said quietly. "Michael is your power of attorney if he says you're not competent to make your own decisions." "I am competent," I shouted. "I'm not going to a nursing home." But it didn't matter what I wanted. My children had already decided. 2 weeks later, Rebecca and Michael came to pick me up from the rehabilitation center. I thought I was going home. Instead, they drove me to Sunny Meadows nursing home. When we pulled into the parking lot, I realized where we were. "No," I said. "Take me home, please. I don't want to be here." "Mom, give it a chance," Rebecca said. "You'll like it here. There are other people your age, activities, you won't be lonely." "I won't be lonely because you're going to visit me," I said desperately. "Right, you'll visit me." "Of course we will," Michael said. "We'll visit all the time." "Every day," Rebecca promised. "We'll be here every single day, Mom. You won't be alone." They checked me in. A nurse showed me to room 237. It was small, a bed, a dresser, a small bathroom, one window. This was my new home. Rebecca and Michael helped me unpack my few belongings. A photo of Thomas, some clothes, my favorite blanket. "We should go," Michael said, checking his watch. "I have a meeting at 4. "Already?" I asked. "But you just got here." "We'll be back tomorrow," Rebecca said, kissing my cheek. "Remember, Mom, every day. We'll visit every day." And then they left. I sat on my bed in that small room and cried. The first few days, I spent most of my time by the window, watching the parking lot, waiting for Rebecca or Michael to come. On day 2, I was sure they'd come. Rebecca had promised. Every day, she'd said. But no one came. On day 3, I told myself they must have been busy with work. They'd definitely come today. But no one came. By day 7, I was starting to panic. Why weren't they visiting? They'd promised. Every single day, they'd promised. I asked the nurses if I could use the phone to call Rebecca. "Of course, Mrs. Williams," Sandra said. "There's a phone in the family room you can use." I called Rebecca's cell phone. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. "Hi, sweetheart, it's Mom," I said. "I was just wondering when you might come visit. You said every day and it's been a week. Give me a call when you can. Love you." She didn't call back. I tried calling Michael. Same thing, straight to voicemail. Michael, it's your mother. Just wanted to see if you were planning to visit soon. Call me back. He didn't call back either. I tried calling Rebecca's house phone. Her husband, Steve, answered. "Oh, hi, Dorothy," Steve said. He sounded uncomfortable. "Rebecca's not here right now. She's at work." "Could you ask her to call me?" I asked. "Sure, I'll let her know," Steve said. But Rebecca didn't call. By the second week, I was desperate. I called Rebecca every single day. Sometimes she answered, but most of the time it went to voicemail. When she did answer, there were always excuses. "Mom, I'm so sorry I haven't been able to visit. Work has been crazy." "Mom, the kids have soccer practice and piano lessons. I just don't have time right now." "Mom, I promise I'll come this weekend. I'll definitely be there." But she never came. I called Michael. He had excuses too. "Mom, I'm traveling for work this week. I'll come visit when I get back." "Mom, we're having issues with the house. The roof is leaking. I need to deal with that first." "Mom, I'll try to come by next week. Things are just really hectic right now." But he never came. I tried to understand. They were busy. They had jobs and families and responsibilities. I knew that. But they'd promised. Every day they'd promised. By the third week, I stopped calling as much. Because every time I called, I could hear the irritation in their voices. "Mom, I told you I'll visit when I can." "Mom, you need to stop calling so much. I'm at work." "Mom, you're fine. The nursing home is taking good care of you. You don't need us there every day." But I did need them. I needed to know I hadn't been forgotten. I needed to know I still mattered to them. One day, I called Rebecca, and she finally told me the truth. "Mom, I can't come visit you every day," Rebecca said, her voice tired. "I know I said I would, but that was unrealistic. I have a full-time job, 2 kids, a husband. I just don't have time to drive to the nursing home every day." "But you promised," I said, my voice breaking. "I know, and I'm sorry," Rebecca said. "But Mom, you need to adjust to your new life there, make friends, do the activities. You can't just sit around waiting for us to visit." "When will you visit then?" I asked. "I'll try to come once a month," Rebecca said. "Maybe more if I can." "Once a month," I repeated. "But you said every day." "I know what I said," Rebecca snapped. "But that was before I realized how much time it takes. The nursing home is 40 minutes away. That's an hour-and-a-half round trip plus the visit. I just don't have that kind of time, Mom." She hung up. I sat holding the phone, feeling like my heart was breaking. Once a month, maybe. That's all I was worth to my daughter. By the 4th week, I stopped watching the parking lot. I stopped calling my children. I stopped hoping they'd come. I spent most of my time in bed. I didn't want to go to meals. I didn't want to do activities. I didn't want to talk to anyone. Sandra, the nurse, was worried about me. "Mrs. Williams, you need to eat something," Sandra said, coming into my room with a tray. "I'm not hungry," I said. "You haven't eaten in 2 days," Sandra said. "I'm going to have to report this to the doctor if you don't eat." "Let him know," I said, turning to face the wall. Sandra sighed and left the tray on my bedside table. Later that day, Vera came to my room. She knocked on the open door. "Dorothy, can I come in?" "I'm tired," I said. "I brought you something," Vera said, coming in anyway. She was holding a small plant in a pot. "It's a succulent, very easy to take care of. I thought it might brighten up your room." She set it on my windowsill. "Thank you," I said quietly, "but I don't need anything." "Dorothy, I know what you're going through," Vera said, sitting in the chair beside my bed. "I know how it feels when your family stops visiting." "They're just busy," I said automatically. "I'm sure they are," Vera said, "but that doesn't make it hurt less, does it?" I turned to look at her. "How long did it take before your family stopped visiting?" "About 3 months," Vera said. "My son used to come every Sunday, then every other Sunday, then once a month. Now I'm lucky if I see him twice a year." "Why do they do this?" I asked, tears filling my eyes. Why do they promise to visit and then just forget about us? They don't forget, Vera said. They just convince themselves that we're fine here, that we don't need them, that the nurses are taking care of us so they don't have to. I don't want nurses, I said. I want my family. I know, Vera said softly. We all do. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Vera said, Dorothy, I want to show you something. Will you come with me? I'm tired, I said again. I know, Vera said, but trust me, you need to see this. Something in her voice made me agree. I got into my wheelchair and Vera pushed me out of my room, down the hallway, past the family visiting area, past the dining room, all the way to the back of the building. We went through a door I'd never noticed before. It led outside to a small garden area I didn't know existed. And that's where I saw something that would change everything. There were about a dozen elderly residents in the garden. They were sitting in a circle, talking and laughing. Some were in wheelchairs, some were on benches. All of them looked happy. What is this? I asked Vera. This is the Forgotten Club, Vera said. We meet here every afternoon at 4 o'clock. The Forgotten Club, I repeated. We're all residents whose families don't visit, Vera explained. Some of us haven't had a visitor in months, some in years. We decided that if our families weren't going to be there for us, we'd be there for each other. I looked at the group. They were playing cards, sharing snacks, telling stories. They looked like a family. Come meet everyone, Vera said, wheeling me toward the circle. And that's when my real story began. Because what I found in the Forgotten Club, what we did together over the next few months. It wasn't just friendship. It wasn't just companionship. It was something much more powerful. Something that would not only change my life, but expose a truth about Sunny Meadows nursing home that no one was supposed to discover. If you need to know what happens next in the Forgotten Club, make sure you're subscribed. Smash that like button and turn on NOTFICTONS. Comment below. Have you or someone you know experienced family abandonment in a nursing home? Where are you watching from? Let me know. Vera wheeled me closer to the circle of residents in the garden. As we approached, the conversation stopped and everyone turned to look at me. Everyone, this is Dorothy Williams, Vera announced. She's in room 237. She's been here 4 months and hasn't had a single visitor. Welcome to the club, an elderly black man said with a sad smile. I'm George Thompson, room 215. I've been here 18 months. My daughter visited twice in the first month. Haven't seen her since. I'm Rita Chen, said a tiny Asian woman sitting in a wheelchair. Room 203, 2 years here. My 3 sons all live within 20 miles. None of them visit anymore. One by one, they introduced themselves. Frank Morrison, 3 years, no visitors for the last 2. Betty Sanders, 5 years, 1 visit per year on Christmas if she was lucky. Harold Green, 7 years, family stopped coming after the first year. Each story was heartbreaking. Each person had been promised visits that never came. Each had been forgotten by the families they'd raised and loved. How many of you are in this club? I asked. 14 of us, Vera said. About a quarter of the residents at Sunny Meadows. The rest have families who visit regularly, at least once a week. But us, we're the forgotten ones. What do you do here? I asked. We support each other, Rita said. We celebrate birthdays together, we play games, we talk. We became the family our real families stopped being. But it's more than just social, George added. We also share information. What kind of information? I asked. About this place, George said, lowering his voice. About Sunny Meadows. There was something in his tone that made me uneasy. What do you mean? Vera looked at the others, then back at me. Dorothy, have you noticed anything strange about this nursing home? Strange how? I asked. The medication schedules, Betty said. The activities that seem pointless. The way some residents act, different. I don't understand, I said. Come to our meeting tomorrow, Vera said. 4 p.m. here in the garden. We'll explain everything. But Dorothy, I need you to promise me something. What? Don't tell any of the staff about the Forgotten Club, Vera said. As far as they know, we're just residents who happen to sit outside together. They don't know we've organized. They don't know what we've discovered. Discovered what? I asked, feeling a chill despite the warm afternoon. Tomorrow, Vera said. All your questions will be answered tomorrow. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the Forgotten Club, about what George had said about noticing strange things about Sunny Meadows. I'd been so consumed with my own loneliness and depression that I hadn't paid attention to anything else. But now that they'd mentioned it, I started to think. The medication. I took several pills 3 times a day. The nurses brought them to my room and watched to make sure I swallowed them. I'd assumed they were for my blood pressure, my cholesterol, the usual medications elderly people take. But I'd never actually asked what they were. The activities. Every day there were scheduled activities. Bingo, arts and crafts, sing-alongs, but I'd never participated, so I didn't know what happened during them. And some residents did seem different. My roommate, Mrs. Patterson, for example, she was alert and conversational when her family visited. But the rest of the time, she seemed foggy, confused, like she was only half awake. I'd thought that was just because she was old. She was 92. But what if it was something else? At midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway, then voices. I pretended to be asleep but kept my eyes open just a crack. 2 nurses came into my room. One of them was Sandra. The other I didn't recognize. They went to Mrs. Patterson's bed. "Time for your medication, Mrs. Patterson," Sandra said softly. Mrs. Patterson stirred. "But I already took my medication at dinner." "This is your special evening medication," Sandra said. "Open up." Mrs. Patterson obediently opened her mouth. Sandra gave her a pill and a cup of water. "There we go," Sandra said. "Go back to sleep now." Mrs. Patterson lay back down and closed her eyes. The nurses left. I lay in the dark, thinking. Special evening medication. I'd never been given anything at night. Why did Mrs. Patterson need special medication? The next morning at breakfast, I watched Mrs. Patterson. She seemed even more foggy than usual. She could barely feed herself. She kept dropping her spoon. But yesterday, before her family visited, she'd been sharp. She'd been reading a book. She'd been telling me about her grandson's baseball game. What happened to her between yesterday and today? At 4 p.m., I went to the garden. All 14 members of the Forgotten Club were there, waiting. "Dorothy, welcome," Vera said. "Please sit with us. We have a lot to tell you." I wheeled into the circle. Everyone looked serious. "Dorothy, we asked you here because we trust you," George began. "And because you're one of us now, one of the Forgotten, that makes you safe." "Safe from what?" I asked. "From what's happening at Sunny Meadows," Rita said. "Dorothy, this nursing home is doing something to the residents whose families don't visit. Something terrible." "What are they doing?" I asked, my heart starting to race. "They're over-medicating us," Vera said bluntly. "Deliberately. They're giving us powerful sedatives and anti-anxiety medications that we don't need. Medications that make us foggy, confused, passive." "Why would they do that?" I asked. "Because residents who are heavily medicated are easier to take care of," Frank said. "They don't complain, they don't ask for help, they don't cause problems. They just sit quietly and wait to die." I felt sick. That can't be true. "It is true," Betty said. "Dorothy, think about it. How many residents have you seen who seem like zombies, who just sit in their wheelchairs all day, staring at nothing?" I thought about the common room. There were always several residents who sat motionless for hours, barely responsive. "I thought they were just very old," I said weakly. "Some of them are only 70, Harold said. "They shouldn't be that out of it, but the staff gives them so much medication that they can barely function." "But why only the residents whose families don't visit?" I asked. "Because we're the ones no one is monitoring," Vera explained. "Think about it. If a resident has family visiting regularly, those family members notice if their loved one suddenly becomes heavily sedated. They ask questions. They complain. They might threaten to sue." But if a resident has no visitors, Rita continued, no one notices. No one asks questions. The staff can medicate us as much as they want, and there's no one to object. It makes their jobs easier, George said bitterly. Fewer demands from residents means they can handle more patients with less staff. It's all about money and convenience. I was trying to process this. How do you know this is really happening? How do you know it's deliberate? We've been documenting it, Vera said. She pulled out a notebook. For the past 6 months, we've been keeping records, names of residents, medication schedules, behavioral changes. We've talked to the more alert residents, asked them what medications they're taking. Most of them don't even know. She opened the notebook and showed me pages and pages of notes. Look at this, Vera said, pointing to a page. Martha Henderson, room 156. She's 72. When she first arrived here 8 months ago, she was sharp, active, played cards with us. Then her son stopped visiting. Within 2 weeks, she started getting special evening medication. Now she can barely remember her own name. Or this one, Rita said, flipping to another page. William Cross, 75, used to walk around the building twice a day for exercise. His daughter stopped visiting 6 months ago. Now he's on so much medication he can barely get out of bed. I looked through the notebook. There were dozens of entries, all residents whose families stopped visiting, all showing the same pattern. Once the visits stopped, the medication increased and the resident declined rapidly. This is criminal, I said. Yes, it is, George said. The question is, what do we do about it? We report it, I said immediately. We go to the police, we tell them what's happening. We tried that, Frank said. Harold called the police 3 months ago. Do you know what happened? What? I asked. The police called the nursing home administrator to investigate, Harold said. The administrator, Mr. Jennings, told them that some residents have dementia and need heavy medication to keep them calm and safe. The police believed him. They told Harold that this was a medical matter, not a criminal one. We tried calling Adult Protective Services, Betty added. They did send someone to investigate, but Mr. Jennings gave them a tour, showed them only the residents with regular visitors who are alert and well cared for. The investigator concluded that Sunny Meadows was a fine facility. So no one believes us, I said, feeling hopeless. No one believes elderly people with no family advocating for them, Vera said. We're invisible. That's why we call ourselves the Forgotten Club. Society has forgotten us. Our families have forgotten us. And that's exactly what Sunny Meadows is counting on. We sat in heavy silence. So what do? I finally asked. We fight back, George said. We refuse the medication. We document everything. We look out for each other. And we wait for an opportunity to expose what's happening here. How do we refuse medication? I asked. The nurses watch us take it. We've developed techniques, Rita said with a small smile. We pretend to swallow the pills but hide them under our tongues. We spit them out when the nurses leave. We've been doing it for months. That's why we're still alert, Vera said. We're the resistance. The 14 of us are the only residents who are still thinking clearly because we're avoiding the medication. Will you join us, Dorothy? George asked. Will you help us fight back? I looked around the circle at these 14 elderly people, all abandoned by their families, all being abused by the institution that was supposed to care for them, all refusing to give up. Yes, I said, I'll join you. Over the next week, the Forgotten Club taught me how to survive at Sunny Meadows without becoming a drugged zombie. Vera showed me how to hide pills under my tongue and spit them out when the nurses left. It took practice, but I learned. Rita taught me which staff members were kind and which were part of the problem. She said to avoid night nurse Brenda, who was the one giving most of the special evening medications. She said we could trust Sandra during the day, but Sandra didn't know about the over-medication. She was just following the doctor's orders. Frank explained the pattern. When a resident's family stops visiting, Mr. Jennings meets with the resident's doctor. They discuss the resident's declining mental state and increased agitation. The doctor, who rarely actually sees the residents, prescribes stronger medications. The cycle begins. But how does Mr. Jennings even know when families stop visiting? I asked. The front desk logs all visitors, George explained. Every person who comes to visit signs in. Mr. Jennings reviews those logs weekly. He knows exactly which residents are being visited and which aren't. And that's when he targets us, Betty said. I was learning to see Sunny Meadows differently. What had seemed like a safe, caring facility was actually something much darker. A place where the most vulnerable residents were being chemically sedated into submission to make them easier and cheaper to care for. And it was all hidden behind smiles and cheerful decorations and activity schedules that made it look like residents were being well cared for. 2 weeks after joining the Forgotten Club, I discovered something that changed everything. It was late at night. I'd gotten up to use the bathroom. On my way back to bed, I heard voices coming from the hallway. I cracked my door open slightly and peeked out. Mr. Jennings was there, talking to Brenda, the night nurse. How many residents are on the enhanced medication protocol now? Mr. Jennings asked. 23, Brenda said. All residents with no regular visitors. Good, Mr. Jennings said. Keep them compliant. Corporate is happy with our reduced incident reports and lower staff complaints. What about the residents in the Forgotten Club? Brenda asked. My blood ran cold. They knew about us. I'm aware they're not taking their medications, Mr. Jennings said. But they're careful. They're not causing problems. As long as they stay quiet and don't make trouble, we'll leave them alone. If they start causing issues, we'll deal with them. How? Brenda asked. We'll find ways to force compliance, Mr. Jennings said. But for now, 14 alert residents out of 90 isn't a problem. The other 23 are heavily medicated. The rest have families visiting and we can't touch them. We're operating within acceptable parameters. They walked away down the hallway. I closed my door and stood shaking in the darkness. They knew we weren't taking our medications. They knew about the Forgotten Club, and they were letting us stay alert only because we weren't causing problems. But what would happen if we did try to expose them? What would they do to us then? I needed to tell the others. The next day, I told Vera what I'd overheard. She immediately called an emergency meeting of the Forgotten Club. We gathered in the garden at 2 p.m. instead of our usual 4 p.m. We have a serious problem, Vera said after I'd told everyone what I'd heard. They know about us. They know we're not taking the medications, and they're watching us. So what do we do? Rita asked. If we try to expose them, they'll force us to take the medications. We'll end up like the others. We need proof, George said. Real proof. Something that can't be ignored or explained away. Something that will force the authorities to take action. What kind of proof? Frank asked. Documentation from inside, George said. Medical records showing the medication increases that aren't medically justified. Emails or memos proving this is an intentional policy. Something concrete that shows this is systematic abuse, not just individual medical decisions. How do we get that? I asked. We can't access the medical records or the administrative offices. No, George said slowly. But my grandson works in it. He taught me some things about computers before he stopped visiting. If we could get access to Mr. Jennings's computer for just 5 minutes, I could download his emails. That might give us the proof we need. How would we get access to his computer? Betty asked. We all sat in silence, thinking. Then I had an idea. What if we created a distraction? I said. Something that would pull Mr. Jennings and the staff away from the administrative office long enough for someone to sneak in and use his computer. What kind of distraction? Vera asked. I thought about it. What if one of us has a medical emergency? Not a real one, but something that looks serious enough that all the staff rushes to help. That could work, Rita said. If someone appears to be having a heart attack or a stroke, every nurse and administrator in the building would respond. I'll do it, Harold volunteered. I used to be an actor. I can fake a convincing medical emergency. And I'll be the one who goes into the office, George said. I'm the only one who knows how to access the computer files. When do we do this? Frank asked. Tomorrow, Vera said, before they decide we're too much of a problem and force us to take the medications. We spent the rest of the afternoon planning. Harold practiced his heart attack. George reviewed what he needed to do on the computer. The rest of us planned our roles in the distraction. Tomorrow, we would get the proof we needed. Tomorrow, we would expose Sunny Meadows. But what we didn't know was that Mr. Jennings had been listening to every word we'd said. Because the garden, like every other area of Sunny Meadows, was under video surveillance. And he'd been watching us for weeks. The Forgotten Club is about to expose the nursing home's dark secret, but Mr. Jennings has been watching them. If you need to know what happens next, subscribe now. Hit that like button and turn on notifications. Comment below. What would you do if you discovered this was happening in a nursing home? Where are you watching from? The next morning, I woke up to find a note slipped under my door. It was handwritten on a piece of paper torn from a notebook. Emergency meeting. Garden, 6 a.m., come alone. Vera. I looked at my clock. It was 5:45 a.m. The sun was barely up. I got dressed as quickly as my 83-year-old body would allow and made my way to the garden in my wheelchair. When I arrived, all 14 members of the Forgotten Club were already there, looking worried. "What's wrong?" I asked. "This," Vera said, holding up a piece of paper. "I found it on my breakfast tray this morning." She handed it to me. It was a printed memo on official Sunny Meadows letterhead. Notice of medication review. The following residents have been scheduled for comprehensive medication reviews due to observed behavioral concerns: Vera Martinez, George Thompson, Rita Chen, Frank Morrison, Betty Sanders, Harold Green, Dorothy Williams, and 7 others. Reviews will take place today at 2 p.m. Attendance is mandatory. New medication protocols will be implemented immediately following review. Mr. Jennings, administrator. My hands started shaking. They're going to force us to take the medications. Not just us, George said. All 14 of us. They're doing it today before we can execute our plan. How did they know? Rita asked. How did they know we were planning something for today? The garden, Frank said, looking around. I should have thought of it before. There must be cameras. We all looked up. Sure enough, mounted discreetly on the building above the garden door was a small security camera. They've been watching us this whole time, Betty said. They heard everything we said yesterday. They know about our plan. So what do? Harold asked. We don't show up to the medication review, I suggested. And go where? Vera asked. Dorothy, we live here. We can't leave. We have nowhere to go. And if we refuse to attend, they'll just have the nurses come to our rooms and forcibly medicate us. They can do that, you know. They can claim we're a danger to ourselves. So we're trapped, I said, feeling hopeless. Not necessarily, George said slowly. They expect us at 2 p.m. They think they've stopped our plan. But what if we move up our timeline? What do you mean? Rita asked. What if we do it now? George said. Right now. At 6 a.m., most of the staff hasn't arrived yet. There's only the night crew. Mr. Jennings isn't even here yet. He doesn't come in until 8 a.m. But we need a distraction, I said. We need to pull the nurses away from the administrative area. I'll create the distraction now, Harold said. I'll have my heart attack in the dining hall. The few nurses on duty will all respond. That'll give George time to get into the office. But can you get into Mr. Jennings's computer without him here? Vera asked George. I don't need to, George said. His computer is probably locked, but the head nurse's computer won't be. She's working right now. I can access the same file systems from her computer. All I need is 5 minutes. Then let's do it, Frank said. Now, before they can stop us. We split up. Harold headed toward the dining hall. The rest of us positioned ourselves in the hallways where we could watch for staff and warn George if anyone was coming. I wheeled myself to a spot near the administrative office where I could see both directions down the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might actually have a heart attack. At exactly 6, 7:15 a.m., we heard Harold's voice from the dining hall. "Help, someone help me, I can't breathe, my chest. Oh God, my chest." The two nurses on duty came running from the nurses' station and rushed toward the dining hall. George immediately slipped into the administrative office. The rest of us waited, our hearts racing, watching the hallways. I could hear Harold in the distance, continuing his performance. I can't breathe. Call 911. The nurses were calling for additional help. One was on the phone with emergency services. George had maybe 5 minutes before an ambulance arrived, and everyone realized Harold wasn't really having a heart attack. 4 minutes passed. Then 5. George still wasn't coming out. I started to panic. What if he couldn't access the files? What if the computer was locked after all? 6 minutes. Then 7. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, George emerged from the office holding a USB flash drive. He gave me a quick thumbs up and quickly wheeled himself down the hallway in the opposite direction. Just as he disappeared around the corner, the nurses came back down the hallway with paramedics. "Where's the patient?" one of the paramedics asked. "In the dining hall," one of the nurses said. "Elderly male complained of chest pain and difficulty breathing." They rushed past me without even glancing in my direction. A few minutes later, they brought Harold back down the hallway on a stretcher. He caught my eye and gave me the tiniest wink. He was fine. His performance had worked. At 7:30 a.m., all 14 members of the Forgotten Club gathered in Vera's room. It was risky having so many people in one room, but we needed to see what George had found. George plugged the USB drive into an old laptop that Rita's son had given her 2 years ago before he stopped visiting. "What did you find?" Vera asked. "Everything," George said, his hands shaking as he opened files. "Email correspondence between Mr. Jennings and the corporate office, medical records, financial documents, it's all here." He opened the first email. We all crowded around the small laptop screen, reading. From Richard Jennings to Sunny Meadows corporate office subject, cost reduction strategy. Per our last quarterly review, I've implemented the resident management protocol we discussed. By increasing sedative medications for residents with no regular family contact, we've reduced staff incident reports by 43% and decreased the staff-to-resident ratio needed for safe operations. This has resulted in $47,000 in monthly savings. Recommend rolling out protocol to all Sunny Meadows facilities. No family complaints received. I felt sick reading it. It was exactly what we'd suspected, but seeing it in writing made it real. George opened another email. From Dr. Patricia Wheeler, staff physician, to Richard Jennings, subject. Ray, medication increases. Richard, I'm uncomfortable with the number of medication increase requests you're sending for residents. Some of these prescriptions seem excessive. Several residents are on dosages of anti-anxiety medications that are higher than standard protocols recommend. Can we schedule a meeting to discuss? From Richard Jennings to Dr. Patricia Wheeler, subject. Ray, medication increases. Dr. Wheeler, these residents have documented behavioral issues and require appropriate medication management. If you're not comfortable prescribing necessary medications for our residents, we may need to find a staff physician who is. Please approve the medication requests as submitted. He threatened the doctor, Rita said. He pressured her into prescribing excessive medications. George opened a spreadsheet file. It showed resident names, visitor frequency, medication levels, and cost savings. There were 23 residents listed, all marked as no regular visitors, all showing increased medication levels, all showing reduced care costs. We were looking at documented evidence of systematic abuse. "This is it," Vera said. "This is the proof we need. With this, they can't claim it's just medical decisions. This shows it's a deliberate policy to over-medicate residents to save money." "What do we do with it?" Betty asked. "We make copies," George said. "We send it to every news organization in the state. We send it to the state health department. We send it to Adult Protective Services again, but this time with undeniable proof. We send it to lawyers who specialize in elder abuse. We make sure so many people have this evidence that it can't be hidden or covered up. And we do it now, Frank said. Before the 2 p.m. medication review. Once they force us to take those medications, we won't be able to think clearly enough to fight back. George started making copies of the files onto multiple USB drives that Rita had been keeping in her room, gifts from her sons from years ago that she'd never used. I'll take one to the public library, Vera said. I'll email it to the news stations from their public computers. I'll mail one to the state attorney general, Rita said. I'll send one to Adult Protective Services, Frank said. We divided up the tasks. Each person took a USB drive and an assignment. But how do we get out of the building? I asked. They'll be watching us, especially after what we did this morning. The morning activities bus, Harold said. It leaves at 10 a.m. to take residents to the senior center downtown for activities. We sign up for it, get on the bus, and when we get downtown, we split up and complete our missions. But what about the 2 p.m. medication review? Betty asked. When we don't show up, they'll come looking for us. By 2 p.m., the evidence will already be out there, George said. It'll be too late for them to stop it. It was a good plan, a risky plan, but our only plan. At 10 a.m., 8 of us gathered at the front entrance where the activities bus was waiting. The other 6 members of the Forgotten Club stayed behind to avoid suspicion. 8 residents going on the activities bus was normal. All 14 would have raised red flags. The bus driver, an older man named Carl, checked his clipboard. Morning, folks. Heading to the senior center for bingo. That's right, Vera said cheerfully. We all boarded the bus. My hands were shaking as I transferred from my wheelchair to a bus seat. This was it. We were really doing this. The bus pulled out of the Sunny Meadows parking lot. I watched the building disappear behind us, wondering if we'd ever come back, wondering what would happen when they discovered what we'd done. 20 minutes later, the bus pulled up to the downtown senior center. I'll be back at 2 p.m. to pick you all up, Carl said. Have fun at bingo. We got off the bus and waited until Carl drove away. Then we split up. Vera headed to the public library, which was 2 blocks away. Rita and Frank went to the post office to mail their copies. Harold and Betty went to a print shop to make physical copies of the documents. George and I went to a law office. George had researched elder abuse attorneys and found one whose office was just 3 blocks from the senior center. My wheelchair moved slowly on the sidewalk. George pushed me when I got tired. Are you okay, Dorothy? George asked as we approached the law office. I'm scared, I admitted. What if this doesn't work? What if they find a way to cover this up? Then at least we tried, George said. At least we didn't just sit quietly while they drugged us into zombies. We fought back. That matters. We reached the law office. The sign on the door read, Patricia Morgan, attorney at law, elder law and abuse cases. We went inside. A receptionist greeted us. Do you have an appointment? She asked. No, George said, but we have evidence of systematic elder abuse at Sunny Meadows nursing home. We need Ms. Morgan to see it immediately. The receptionist looked at us, 2 elderly people, one in a wheelchair, both looking scared but determined. One moment, she said, and disappeared into a back office. A minute later, a woman in her 50s emerged. She had kind eyes but a no-nonsense demeanor. I'm Patricia Morgan, she said. You said you have evidence of abuse at Sunny Meadows. Yes, I said. Please, you have to help us. They're going to forcibly medicate us at 2 p.m. today. We're running out of time. Ms. Morgan looked at her watch. It was 11:15 a.m. Come into my office, she said. Show me what you have. For the next 45 minutes, Ms. Morgan reviewed the files on George's USB drive. Her expression grew more serious with each document she read. This is extensive, she said. Emails showing deliberate policy, medical records showing excessive medications, financial documents showing profit motive. This is exactly the kind of evidence we need for a case like this. So you'll help us? I asked. I'll do more than help you, Ms. Morgan said. She picked up her phone. I'm calling the state health department right now, and the police. This isn't just civil abuse, this is criminal. Mr. Jennings and potentially others at Sunny Meadows could face criminal charges. She made several phone calls while George and I waited. Each time, she explained what we'd discovered and sent copies of the files. Finally, she hung up and turned to us. Here's what's going to happen, Ms. Morgan said. The state health department is sending investigators to Sunny Meadows immediately. They should arrive within the hour. The police are also sending officers. They're going to do a surprise inspection and interview residents and staff. What about us? George asked. What about the 2 p.m. medication review? We can't go back there. You won't, Ms. Morgan said. I'm getting an emergency protective order right now. It will prevent Sunny Meadows from administering any non-essential medications to you or the other 13 residents in your group until a judge can review the case. You'll be protected. What about the other residents? I asked. The ones who are already being over-medicated, the 23 people on that list. The health department will review all resident medications as part of their investigation, Ms. Morgan said. If they find evidence of inappropriate prescribing, those residents will be protected too. I felt tears running down my face. We'd done it. We'd actually done it. What happens now? George asked. Now you go back to Sunny Meadows, Ms. Morgan said. But you won't be alone. I'm coming with you, and so are the authorities. At 1:30 p.m., we all met back at the senior center. Vera, Rita, Frank, Harold, Betty, George, and me. Everyone had completed their missions. The evidence had been distributed to news organizations, government agencies, and advocacy groups. And Ms. Morgan was with us, along with 2 investigators from the state health department and 2 police officers. We all got into official vehicles and drove back to Sunny Meadows. When we arrived, Mr. Jennings was standing in the lobby, clearly agitated. He'd realized that 8 residents had left on the morning activities bus, but hadn't returned on the scheduled pickup. His expression changed from annoyance to shock when he saw us arrive with lawyers, investigators, and police. What is this? Mr. Jennings demanded. Mr. Jennings, I'm Inspector Karen Walsh from the State Department of Health, one of the investigators said, showing her badge. We're here to conduct an immediate inspection of this facility based on allegations of resident abuse. This is outrageous, Mr. Jennings sputtered. I don't know what these residents have told you, but we have emails from you documenting a systematic program of over-medicating residents to reduce costs, Inspector Walsh interrupted. We have medical records showing excessive prescriptions. We have financial documents showing profit motive. Mr. Jennings, this is a serious investigation. I want to speak to my lawyer, Mr. Jennings said. That's your right, one of the police officers said. But in the meantime, we'll be interviewing staff and residents and reviewing medical records. For the next 3 hours, the investigators worked. They interviewed nurses. They reviewed medication logs. They examined medical records. They talked to residents, including the 23 who were heavily medicated. The 6 members of the Forgotten Club who had stayed behind joined us in the common area. We all waited together, holding hands, supporting each other. At 5 p.m., Inspector Walsh emerged from her interviews. We have enough evidence to suspend Mr. Jennings immediately, she announced. As of right now, he is removed from his position as administrator pending a full investigation. We're also suspending several staff members who were directly involved in the medication scheme. Mr. Jennings was escorted out of the building by the police. As he passed by our group, he glared at us. You've ruined everything, he said venomously. Do you know how many people this facility employs? How many families depend on these jobs? You've destroyed it all. You destroyed it yourself, Vera said calmly, when you decided to abuse the people in your care. After Mr. Jennings was gone, Inspector Walsh turned to our group. I want to thank you, she said. What you did took incredible courage. You exposed serious abuse that has likely been happening at other facilities in this chain. Because of you, we're launching investigations at all 17 Sunny Meadows locations across the state. What about the residents who are over-medicated? I asked. The 23 people, will they be okay? We're bringing in doctors to review every medication order in this facility, Inspector Walsh said. Any resident who is inappropriately medicated will have their medications adjusted. It may take some time for them to recover, but they will recover. That night, for the first time since I'd arrived at Sunny Meadows 4 months ago, I felt hope. Not just hope for myself, but hope for all of us. The forgotten ones, the abandoned ones, the ones society had written off. We'd fought back, and we'd won. But the story wasn't over yet, because the next morning, something happened that I never expected. Something that would change everything one more time. Before I continue, kindly subscribe now to see the emotional conclusion. Smash that like button and turn on NOTFICTONS. Comment, would you be brave enough to fight back like the Forgotten Club did? Where are you watching from? The morning after Mr. Jennings was removed from Sunny Meadows, I was sitting in the garden with the Forgotten Club when Sandra, the day nurse, came outside looking for me. Mrs. Williams, you have visitors, she said, looking surprised. My heart skipped a beat. Visitors who? Your daughter Rebecca and your son Michael, Sandra said. They're in the family visiting area. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. After 4 months of abandonment, they were suddenly here, today of all days. I'll come with you, Vera said, starting to stand. No, I said, I need to do this alone. I wheeled myself inside and down the hallway to the family visiting area. Through the doorway, I could see Rebecca and Michael sitting on the couch, both looking uncomfortable. I wheeled into the room. They both stood up immediately. Mom, Rebecca said, rushing toward me. Oh my God, are you okay? We came as soon as we heard. Heard what? I asked coldly. About what was happening here, Michael said. It's all over the news, the abuse, the over-medication. Mom, we had no idea if we'd known. You would have what? I interrupted. You would have visited, like you promised, every day you promised. Rebecca's face flushed. Mom, I know we haven't been here as much as we should have. You haven't been here at all, I said. Not once in 4 months, not one single visit. We were busy, Michael said defensively. We have lives, Mom, jobs, families. And I'm not part of your family anymore, I asked, my voice breaking. I raised you, I gave you everything. And the moment you put me in this place, you forgot I existed. That's not true, Rebecca said, tears in her eyes. We didn't forget you, we thought you were being taken care of. We thought you were safe here. You thought, I said. You didn't know because you never checked. You never called. You never came. Rebecca, do you know how many hours I sat by my window watching the parking lot, waiting for you? Mom, I'm sorry, Rebecca said. I'm so sorry. I should have visited more. I should have been here. Once a month, you said, I reminded her. You told me you'd visit once a month. You couldn't even do that. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we saw on the news that you were one of the residents who exposed the abuse. That took a lot of courage. We're proud of you. Don't, I said sharply. Don't you dare tell me you're proud of me. Where were you when I needed you? Where were you when I was sitting alone in my room, depressed, thinking about giving up? Where were you when this nursing home was trying to drug me into a zombie? We didn't know, Rebecca said weakly. You didn't know because you didn't care enough to find out, I said. You put me here and walked away. You told yourself I was fine so you wouldn't feel guilty about abandoning me. Mom, that's not fair, Michael protested. Fair, I said, my voice rising. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I spent 4 months completely alone? Is it fair that I watched other residents get visitors every week while I got nobody? Is it fair that the only people who cared about me were other residents whose families had also abandoned them? We're here now, Rebecca said. We want to make it right. How? I asked. How do you make it right? How do you give me back those 4 months? How do you give me back the trust I had in you? They both stood silent, unable to answer. "Why are you really here?" I asked. "Is it because you actually care about me? Or is it because the news is reporting on the abuse at Sunny Meadows and you're worried about how it looks that you never visited?" Rebecca's expression told me I was right. "You're worried people will judge you," I said. "You're worried your friends and coworkers will see the news and think you're bad children because you never visited your mother. This isn't about me. This is about your reputations." "That's not true," Michael said, but he couldn't look me in the eye. "Get out," I said. "Mom," Rebecca started. "I said get out," I repeated. "You made your choice 4 months ago when you dropped me off here and never came back. You chose your comfortable lives over your mother. Well, I've made my choice too. I choose the people who were actually there for me. The Forgotten Club. They're my family now." "Mom, please," Rebecca begged. "Give us another chance. We'll visit every week. We'll call, we'll—" "You promised that before," I said. "Every day you promised. I don't believe your promises anymore." I turned my wheelchair around and started to leave. "Mom, wait," Michael called after me. "What if we take you out of here? What if we bring you home? You can live with me or Rebecca will take care of you." I stopped and turned back. "Now you offer. Now, when the nursing home is all over the news and you're embarrassed. Where was this offer 4 months ago? Where was it 3 months ago? 2 months ago? Last week?" "Better late than never," Michael said hopefully. "No," I said. "Sometimes late is just late. Sometimes the damage is done and can't be undone. You broke my heart. You made me feel worthless and forgotten. And now you want me to just forgive you because you finally showed up." "We're your children," Rebecca said desperately. "And I'm your mother," I said. "But you forgot that, so now you get to live with the consequences of your choices. Goodbye." I wheeled out of the family visiting area and back to the garden, where the Forgotten Club was waiting for me. "How did it go?" Vera asked gently. "They wanted to make amends," I said. "Now that it's convenient for them. Now that it looks bad that they never visited." "What did you tell them?" Rita asked. "I told them it's too late," I said. "I told them the Forgotten Club is my family now." And I meant it. Over the next week, the story of the Forgotten Club and the abuse at Sunny Meadows exploded across the state. News reporters came to interview us. We sat in the garden, all 14 of us, and told our stories. I talked about my 4 months of waiting for visits that never came, about discovering the Forgotten Club, about learning what Sunny Meadows was doing to residents whose families didn't visit. George showed the journalists the USB drive with the evidence we'd collected, the emails, the medical records, the financial documents proving it was all about money. Vera talked about her 2 years at Sunny Meadows and how she'd watched resident after resident decline when their families stopped visiting. The story ran on every news channel. The headlines read, "Nursing home, drugged abandoned residents to cut costs. Forgotten residents fight back against systemic abuse. The Forgotten Club, how 14 seniors exposed a nursing home scandal." The public response was overwhelming. Thousands of people called the state health department reporting concerns about their own family members in nursing homes. The investigation expanded to examine elder care facilities across the entire state. And our story sparked a national conversation about how society treats elderly people, especially those without regular family contact. 2 weeks after the scandal broke, the state shut down Sunny Meadows permanently. The entire facility was closed pending further investigation. But that created a new problem. 90 residents suddenly needed new places to live. For residents with families, this wasn't a huge issue. Their families came and moved them to other facilities or took them home. But for the 14 of us in the Forgotten Club, and for many of the other residents who'd been over-medicated and had no family support, finding new placements was difficult. That's when something unexpected happened. A wealthy philanthropist named Catherine Blackwell saw our story on the news. She was in her 70s herself and had been fighting for elder rights for decades. She called Patricia Morgan, our lawyer, with a proposal. Ms. Morgan came to meet with all 14 of us in what used to be the Sunny Meadows common room. I have news, Ms. Morgan said. Catherine Blackwell wants to create a new kind of senior living facility, one specifically designed for elderly people who don't have regular family support. She's calling it the Meadowbrook Community Home. It will be fully funded by her foundation, so residents won't have to pay. And she wants all of you, the Forgotten Club, to be the first residents. We all looked at each other in shock. What's the catch? George asked suspiciously. No catch, Ms. Morgan said. Ms. Blackwell believes that elderly people deserve dignity, care, and community regardless of whether they have family support. The Meadowbrook Community Home will have strict oversight, regular inspections, and a residents' council that will have real power to report concerns and make decisions about the facility. Why us? I asked. Because you showed incredible courage, Ms. Morgan said. You fought back when you had every reason to give up. Ms. Blackwell wants you to help create a model for how elder care should work. She wants you to be involved in every decision, from hearing staff to designing programs to setting policies. We'd have actual power, Vera asked, not just token input. Real power, Ms. Morgan confirmed. Legally protected power. The charter for Meadowbrook specifically states that the Residents' Council can override any decision made by administrators if they believe it's not in residents' best interests. Rita started crying. Someone actually wants us. Someone actually thinks we matter. You've always mattered, Ms. Morgan said gently. Your families might have forgotten that, but the rest of the world hasn't. What you did here, exposing the abuse, fighting for yourselves and others, it matters. You matter. 1 month after Sunny Meadows closed, the 14 members of the Forgotten Club moved into Meadowbrook Community Home. It was beautiful. Not just the building, though it was lovely, with bright, spacious rooms and a huge garden, but the philosophy behind it. Every resident had their own room with their own bathroom. There was a communal kitchen where residents could cook their own meals if they wanted. There were activity rooms, a library, a movie theater, an art studio. But most importantly, there was respect. The staff at Meadowbrook were trained to treat residents as autonomous adults, not children. They helped when needed, but they didn't take over. They supported residents' independence rather than controlling them. And the Residents' Council, which included all 14 members of the Forgotten Club, met weekly to discuss any concerns and make decisions about the facility. For the first time in months, I felt like a person again. Not just an elderly woman to be managed, but a human being with dignity and agency. 3 months after moving to Meadowbrook, I was in the garden reading a book when one of the staff members came to find me. Dorothy, you have visitors, she said. My stomach tightened. Who? A woman and a man. They said they're your children. Rebecca and Michael. They'd found out where I'd moved. I don't want to see them, I said. That's your choice, the staff member said. I can tell them you're not available, but Dorothy, they've been here before. This is their 3rd time coming. Each time I told them you were busy and they left, but they keep coming back. 3 times, I said. They've come 3 times. Every Saturday for the past 3 weeks, the staff member confirmed. They bring flowers each time. When you don't see them, they ask me to give you the flowers and a note. I never got any flowers or notes, I said. Because you told me when you arrived that you didn't want anything from your children, the staff member reminded me gently. So I've been throwing away the flowers and notes. But Dorothy, they're not giving up. Maybe you should at least talk to them. I thought about it. 3 weeks of visits, coming every week even though I'd refused to see them. Maybe they were serious this time. Fine, I said. I'll see them, but only for 10 minutes. The staff member brought Rebecca and Michael to the garden. They both looked nervous. Hi, Mom. Rebecca said softly. You have 10 minutes, I said. Talk. Mom, we've been coming every week, Michael said. We know you told us it was too late, but we're not giving up. We're going to keep coming every week until you believe that we mean it. Mean what? I asked. That we're sorry, Rebecca said, sitting on a bench near my chair. That we failed you. That we abandoned you when you needed us most. Mom, we were terrible children. We got so caught up in our own lives that we forgot about you. and there's no excuse for that. No, there isn't, I agreed. But we're trying to do better, Michael said. We've been going to therapy, both of us, talking about why we abandoned you, trying to understand what we did wrong. And, I asked. And we realized we're just like so many other people, Rebecca said. We put you in a nursing home and told ourselves you were fine there so we wouldn't have to face our own guilt. We convinced ourselves that the staff was taking care of you, so we didn't have to. We made excuses about being busy because facing you meant facing what we'd done. At least you're honest now, I said. Mom, we can't undo the past, Michael said. We can't give you back those 4 months. We can't erase the pain we caused, but we can commit to doing better going forward, if you'll let us. Why should I asked. You promised before and broke your promise. What's different this time? Because we almost lost you, Rebecca said, tears streaming down her face. When we saw the news about Sunny Meadows, about what they were doing to residents without visitors, we realized that could have been you. If you hadn't fought back, if you hadn't exposed the abuse, you might have been one of those residents drugged into a stupor. And it would have been our fault because we weren't there to protect you. That terrified us, Michael added. The thought that we could have lost you forever, and our last interaction would have been abandoning you in a nursing home. We don't want that to be our story, Mom. We want a chance to be better. I looked at my children. They looked genuine. They looked remorseful. They looked like they might actually mean it this time. 1 visit per week, I said. Every Saturday at 2 p.m. If you miss a single week without a very good reason, we're done forever. Understood. Understood, they both said immediately. And you're on probation, I continued. For 6 months. If you prove you can actually stick to your commitment, then maybe we can start rebuilding our relationship. But I'm not making any promises. That's fair, Rebecca said. Thank you for giving us another chance. Don't thank me yet, I said. Thank me in 6 months if you're still showing up. 6 months later, I was sitting in my room at Meadowbrook, looking at my calendar. Every Saturday for the past 6 months had a check mark. Rebecca and Michael had visited every single week. Not once had they missed. They'd started bringing their families, too. Rebecca's husband, Steve, and their 2 children, Michael's wife, Jennifer, and their daughter. My grandchildren, whom I barely knew, were becoming part of my life again. But more than that, Rebecca and Michael were genuinely trying. They called during the week to check on me. They asked about my life at Meadowbrook. They listened when I talked about the Forgotten Club and the work we were doing to advocate for elder rights. They were learning to see me as a person again, not just an obligation. There was a knock on my door. It was Vera. Dorothy, are you ready? Vera asked. The ceremony starts in an hour. Almost, I said. Today was a special day. The state was holding a ceremony to honor the Forgotten Club for exposing the abuse at Sunny Meadows and for advocating for changes to elder care regulations across the state. Thanks to our efforts and the media attention, the state had passed new laws requiring regular, unannounced inspections of all nursing homes. They'd also created a hotline for residents to report abuse anonymously. And most importantly, they'd passed a Forgotten Residents Protection Act that required nursing homes to report to state authorities any resident who hadn't had a visitor in more than 30 days. Social workers would then check on those residents to ensure they weren't being abused or neglected. Our fight had changed the system. I finished getting dressed and met the rest of the Forgotten Club in the Meadowbrook Common Room. All 14 of us were going to the ceremony together. When we arrived at the state capitol building, there were reporters and cameras everywhere. We were led into a large hall where hundreds of people were gathered. The governor himself was there to present us with awards. The courage shown by these 14 individuals represents the best of humanity, the governor said in his speech. When they saw injustice, they didn't accept it. When they were told they were powerless, they proved everyone wrong. They fought back. And because of their bravery, countless other elderly residents across this state are now safer and better protected. One by one, we were called up to receive our awards. When it was my turn, I wheeled onto the stage. The audience stood and applauded. In the front row, I saw Rebecca and Michael. They were standing and clapping, tears running down their faces. They were proud of me. Finally, genuinely proud. After the ceremony, Rebecca came up to me. "Mom, I'm so proud of you," she said. "What you did, exposing the abuse, fighting back, changing the laws, it's incredible." "I had help," I said, gesturing to the Forgotten Club. "I couldn't have done it alone." "But you led them," Michael said. "You were brave when you had every reason to give up. You're a hero, Mom." "I'm not a hero," I said. "I'm just someone who refused to be forgotten." 1 year after the Sunny Meadows scandal, I was sitting in the Meadowbrook garden with Vera. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon. "Do you ever think about those 4 months at Sunny Meadows?" Vera asked me. "Every day," I admitted. "Not because I want to, but because I can't forget what it felt like to be completely abandoned. To watch that parking lot every day, waiting for someone who never came." "But something good came from it," Vera said. "If you hadn't been abandoned, you wouldn't have joined the Forgotten Club. We wouldn't have exposed the abuse. Hundreds of other residents wouldn't have been protected." "That's true," I said, "but I wish it hadn't taken abandonment to create change." "Me too," Vera agreed. "But Dorothy, look at us now. Look at what we built. Meadowbrook isn't just a nice place to live. It's proof that elderly people can have dignity and purpose and community, even without family." She was right. Meadowbrook had become a model for elder care. Other facilities were studying our model and trying to replicate it. Catherine Blackwell was working on opening 3 more Meadowbrook communities in other states. The Forgotten Club had gone from being abandoned residents to being advocates and leaders. And I'd gone from being a forgotten mother to being someone who mattered. I heard a car pull into the Meadowbrook parking lot. I looked over and saw Rebecca's car, right on time, 2 p.m. on Saturday like always. She'd kept her promise. For a full year, she and Michael had visited every single Saturday. They'd earned back my trust slowly, week by week. We'd never have the relationship we had before. That trust was gone forever. But we were building something new, something more honest, something where I was respected as a person, not just managed as an obligation. Rebecca got out of her car and waved when she saw me in the garden. She had a bouquet of flowers and what looked like a photo album under her arm. "Mom," she called, walking toward me, "I brought something to show you. Pictures of the kids' school play. You're going to love this." As I watched my daughter approach, I thought about how far we'd come. A year ago, I was sitting alone in a room at Sunny Meadows, abandoned and forgotten, watching a parking lot where no one ever came. Today, I was surrounded by my chosen family, the Forgotten Club, with my biological family learning to be family again. My family had said they'd visit every day. Months passed, and nobody came to visit. But because of that abandonment, I found something more valuable than I'd ever had before. I found my strength, I found my voice, I found my purpose. And I found that you don't stop mattering just because your family forgets you. You don't stop being valuable just because you're old and alone. The world tried to forget us, but we refused to be forgotten. And we changed everything. My name is Dorothy Williams. I'm 84 years old. And this is the story of how being forgotten helped me remember who I really was. This story proves that Sparkle's elder abandonment is a real and widespread problem. Sparkle's nursing homes can abuse residents who have no family oversight. Sparkle's elderly people have power when they work together. Sparkle's being forgotten doesn't mean you don't matter. Sparkle's you can rebuild trust, but it takes consistent action. Sparkle's found family is just as valid as biological family. Sparkle's it's never too late to find your purpose and fight back. Sparkle's courage doesn't have an age limit. If this story moved you, subscribe for more powerful stories about fighting back. Smash that like button. White heavy checkmark turn on NOTFICTUNS. Drop a comment. Would you visit your elderly parents regularly if they were in a nursing home? Have you or someone you know experienced elder abandonment? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, Jamaica, Philippines, Ghana, South Africa, Trinidad. Remember, check on elderly family members regularly. Elder abuse happens when no one is watching. Nursing home residents with no visitors are vulnerable. Report suspected abuse to authorities. Elderly people deserve dignity and respect. Found family is powerful. It's never too late to make amends. Consistent action rebuilds trust. Fighting back against injustice matters at any age. You are never too old to make a difference. Community and connection are essential. Don't abandon elderly family members. Regular visits save lives. Oversight prevents abuse. Elderly voices matter. Thank you for following Dorothy's journey from abandonment to advocacy, from forgotten to hero.